Coming up on this week's episode, we're talking Newcastle, Bruno Lage and Ronaldo, plus all our usual features, so let's get started. Hello and welcome to a new episode of View from the Sideline podcast. It's Chris here and Liam is here. Hello Liam.
Evening Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad Liam. It's been a while.
It has been a few weeks. Yes.
So I think we're both ready and raring to go. So we're going to go straight into it. And we're going to talk, I think we'll talk Newcastle first. And the job that Eddie Howe is currently doing there. I mean, when he took over from Steve Bruce, I don't know if you felt the same way, but you instantly saw a difference in how they were playing and the confidence that the players seemed to have under Eddie Howe. And bearing in mind, when he took over, he didn't really change the team drastically, did he? He didn't, I think he brought in a couple of players, but that was about it.
He could have spent a lot more, I think. Obviously, the funds are there, but I think, I support a team that's been managed by Steve Bruce. He's not the most inspiring. He's obviously been sacked today, as luck would have it. But he's not the most positive. He's very much a do the basics right type of coach. And I think there's a time and a place for that. We've seen him brought into many teams that are going through like a relegation battle. He's obviously had success in the Championship as well with that kind of method, but it's not the most inspiring, I think, of ways to play football. So with Howe coming in, I always liked the way he set up his Bournemouth side when he was there. On paper they weren't the strongest team in the league, but he stuck to a philosophy. He wanted to play positive attacking football. He always wanted to play a similar kind of style, like a recognisable style. And I think last season when he he didn't have the whole season, admittedly. He only had the January transfer window to bring people in. Yeah. But he brought players in that fit that system. And he just made a bit more of a positive feel around the club. And it's so different, especially with a club like Newcastle, 52,000 a week. They didn't like Steve Bruce. The atmosphere was awful. But it was because the football wasn't getting them off their seat. I think even if Newcastle don't win, if they're trying to play the right sort of attacking football with, players showing willingness to fight for the Newcastle shirt, they get behind the team and it makes a hell of a difference. Yeah. And I think just to sort of underline this point, this season they've only lost one game. If there was anything I could criticise Newcastle with, it was that they were too easy to beat. Under Bruce, to go behind, they would never look like getting back into the game. Now they're really hard to beat. They've only won 3 games this season, admittedly, but they're really hard to beat. They've lost once in their opening, I think, 9 games. That to me goes to show that the coaching there is right. They're doing the right things, and that kind of positive approach, they always feel like they're in the game. And I think it's something they've been missing for some time. And I think Howe's got to get most of the credit for that. Yeah,
and you think, looking back sort of in the transfer window that he has had, he hasn't, they haven't spent, 80, 90 million on one player. They kept it, to like a good standard of what they were paying for. You've got to look at people like Bruno Guimaraes, who seems to be that sort of player that can, assist a goal and actually, get on the score sheet like he did at the weekend. And, the players that they bought, they have fitted in, very well. Even, players like Dan Burn, like the back, he seems to be an improved player and he has improved, I think, Newcastle's defence. But then you've got to look at players who have been there for a while, who were under Bruce, who were struggling, players like Almiron, Longstaff and Jacob Murphy,
Linton.
Who aren't, they're not always, going to start, but, when they are playing well. Murphy, Longstaff and Almiron all played at the weekend and Almiron, if it wasn't for Guimaraes, is probably their best player on the pitch. But he seems to have, just given, the old players there a huge confidence boost. And it is one of those things in football where, when you are winning, things are going to work out. But like you just pointed to then, even if things haven't gone their way this season, they've still come back and end up winning the game next, or putting in a good shift. So and they've still got their star man, as if to say that they bought in the summer. Isaac, he's out injured at the moment, but they've still got him to come back. Yet they're still scoring. They scored like nine-ish goals in the last 2-3 games. So and I don't think you would have said that under Steve Bruce. I think you would have said nine goals in about 12, 13 games. So I mean, he seems to have done everything right, and if you just look at the league table where they are, I mean, a lot of people will say, well, he's had X amount to spend, they've been taken over, you should expect them to be up there, but it doesn't always work like that. You can bring in 8-9 players in a season, and it just doesn't gel, and it just doesn't work. You've got to give time, for the players to gel well. But he seems to have managed to pick up players that have sort of bought into his philosophy and the way he's playing, pretty quickly. And
I think we saw Man City do it. I think we saw Man City in the early days when they first got money. They went out and they broke Premier League transfer records or their own transfer records. Robinho came in, Elano came in. Players that were, individually absolutely fine, but they just didn't fit a particular style. And it took a good 5 or 6 years for City to really sort of get towards the top and to be taken seriously almost.
They needed a top manager, didn't they? That's what they needed, and they got that with Pellegrini. When they won their first title, and before that, you look at Sven-Göran Eriksson was one of them, so it kind of says it all, really.
Exactly.
But I think to be the best team, you don't necessarily have to have 11 of the best players in the world on the pitch. If you've got yourself like a world-class manager, 6 average players, a few world-class players, and a few mid-table players in that team. You've got a good mix of players, and it's the right combination. You don't have to spend. I mean, going back to the Man City thing, they bought Robinho, and he didn't even know who Man City were.
No, exactly.
You remember the interview when I think he thought he had signed for Manchester United.
Yeah.
And you were right. They splashed cash. They were just buying striker after striker. They bought in. Who else did they buy in? They bought in Joe. Ben John, players that had scored well, but not necessarily. They were never going to win you the league. Not like when they bought in Aguero. Aguero was a huge difference to Manchester City. And look at Man City now. They've gone from Aguero to Haaland. It's not like they've, last season they did go without maybe a central striker. They had Jesus, but he seemed to prefer maybe Sterling through the middle. But again, I think with Eddie Howe, I think he's almost, I'm not comparing him to Pep Guardiola at all, but you can kind of see similarities in how they expect, the players to play. They're both very attacking, and that's, like you pointed out, Newcastle now, they don't just sit back against big teams. They'll come at you when they're playing these big teams. And, they might concede 2 goals, but with the way they're playing at the moment, they're more than capable of scoring 2 or 3 goals, 3 goals and they've won the match. So,
and I think what's really smart as well, the first signing really, or the first major signing they made was to bring Trippier in.
Yeah.
And when you're in the place where Newcastle were sort of like towards the bottom, trying to stay up at the time, because I think they were still in the bottom 3.
They were, yeah, because that was the risk that he took joining them, wasn't it? Because he took that risk in joining them where he could have been playing championship football.
Exactly. And I think it was sensible for two reasons. Number one, you're getting a defender who's played in the Premier League for a long time. It's pretty consistent. But number two, you're getting someone who every set piece you get in the final third is going to cause oppositions to think.
Yeah.
And I think that can be such a difference to a side. And again, I'm saying this as a Villa fan. We don't really have, and every time we get a free kick 25 yards out from goal, I don't feel like there's a chance coming because we just don't seem to create them. I know we've scored from two corners, but they've been direct from two corners this season. That's it. That's about as much as we get. So to bring someone in like that, someone who can score a free kick, whip in a good delivery from free kicks out wide and things like that, you play the percentages a little bit better. You know that if you win challenges further up the field, if you win the ball back, you're going to get free kicks and you're going to get chances because of it. And I think it was a really smart thing to bring Trippier in. Shores up the defence a little bit, but it also gives them that option going forward. And I think that's really good recruitment. And I think it's buying smarter and not just in quantity, which is where they've been really successful so far.
So do you, like, coming on sort of the end of the conversation now, but where they are now, do you think that they can hold out for Europe this season? I'm not saying Champions League, but from where I'm looking and from what I've seen, I think they are very good contenders to get a sort of a fifth or a sixth spot this season.
Yes, I think so, because I look at the teams around them at the minute. I mean, you've got Liverpool. You would imagine they'll pick up form, and they will obviously work their way up the table. They're the only team really below them that I can see overtaking them. You can argue maybe West Ham, perhaps. They've had a bit of a shaky start to the season, although they played a little bit better against Fulham at the weekend. But I think if Newcastle go into the Christmas or to the World Cup break below 7th or 8th position, you know they've got that financial backing to say, well, who's had a good World Cup? I'll buy them. So I think they're going to be able to maintain it. I think they'll be absolutely fine up until the international break, personally. It just depends what teams below them hit form. But I genuinely think they will probably be in Europe next year. I think comfortably top 8, but they definitely, I think, could challenge for top 6. I don't see, I mean, they're one place behind United, I think, at the moment. I don't see much of a difference between the strengths of the two squads at the moment, the form that Newcastle are on and the sort of inconsistencies that Man United are showing. I could definitely see them sort of finishing in and around each other.
Yeah, well, they've conceded exactly the same amount of goals as Manchester City this season, Newcastle. I mean, Man City, Newcastle and Brighton have all conceded 9. And then you got Arsenal, Tottenham and Chelsea on 10. So, you know, they're doing so. Everton have actually conceded 9 as well. So they're doing something right. It's an exciting time, I think, for if you're a Newcastle fan. Not so exciting if you are a Wolves fan.
No, we spoke about them a few weeks ago, didn't we?
And then
they were struggling.
Whilst we've been away, Bruno Lage was given his marching orders after the defeat to West Ham, I believe. But I think with Wolves, it's a strange one because I think they've been quite a consistent team, I think, over the last couple of years. And to be fair, you know, I think they've only won one game this season. I think they drew the other they've drawn 2 as well, or 3 maybe. But where they have struggled this season the most is actually scoring goals. I mean, I think they've got 2 or 3 goals this season. I think it might even be 2 goals, which for a team like Wolves is not very good at all. And when you sort of look at the players that they brought in over the summer, I mean, they had to scramble around to sign Diego Costa after the transfer window. And I think whenever a team has to do that, I think you're always thinking in your head that they are lacking a bit in the striking department. See, Chelsea just played Wolves at the weekend, and they offered absolutely nothing going forward. I think they had 2 shots on target. Costa was replaced after about 57 minutes. And going forward, they looked awful. And even, I think actually defending, they looked even worse. But sort of, I'm trying to find actually players that they actually brought in. You know, they brought in Núñez from Sporting. I think he was sort of their marquee signing. But other than that, you've got to say they bought the guy from Exeter as well, Alfie Pond, but I'm assuming he's probably not playing. But then you look at the players that they actually sold. They sold Dendoncker to you, but for me, Dendoncker was one of their most consistent players over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So, and you got they sold other players like Willy Bolly. Again, probably been quite consistent for them. Morgan Gibbs-White they sold, although they were offered quite a substantial money for him, so that's probably why they sold him. But to me, they just Connor Cody.
Yeah, their captain. That is, I think, the big loss for them. He's got to be,
odd.
He's got to be obviously a huge presence for them to have a leader like that in the dressing room and on the pitch and things. I always, in lockdown, when there was no fans, I will always remember every single Wolves game. You could just hear Connor Cody the entire game, just over the speakers on the side of the pitch. He was the only voice you could hear throughout the entire game, and you've got to miss someone like that on the pitch. To let him go as easily as I think they did. Yeah, there's something not quite right. I don't know whether it's that Villa had it a few years ago. We were challenging for the sort of top 6. And then I think the board decided if we want to get to the next level, we're going to have to invest more than we're willing to invest. Maybe they've reached that point where they think, they've had sort of consistent top 10 finishes or top 8 finishes. Maybe they're thinking, well, we can't really get better unless we put hundreds of millions in that we don't want to spend.
Yeah.
Maybe their time has come. Maybe they've reached their peak. And, I hope not for Wolves fans' sake. And to be honest, the first couple of years after they got promoted, they played some really good football. And to be able to bring like Ruben Neves and people like that to the Championship originally, but obviously to the Premier League, I think if Wolves were to struggle, they are struggling, but if they were to finish, bottom 5, bottom 6, he would obviously be wanting to leave, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And I think he'll go to a big club, but yeah, it's, I was looking at the people leaving them this summer. I didn't feel like they were in as bad a place as Leicester were, because they managed to keep hold of Neves really more than anything. But even now, I'm looking at like Moutinho's obviously been a big player for them, but he's 35 now, I think 35.
Yeah.
Patricio, excuse me, Rui Patricio obviously left them last year. And they've had Jose Sarr in goal, and I don't think, I don't know. I think Patricio was great for them, and I don't think Sarr has quite been the same level.
No.
I think so. It just looks like they're slightly downgrading everybody that they get rid of. And I think Bolly was probably more an age thing. I don't know whether they think they're getting to a certain age and they're sort of invest in youth. But it's an odd one that they've gone from playing quite attractive football. Obviously, Jimenez got injured last season, which meant that their goals sort of dried up a little bit. They've not found anyone to replace him, and even since he's come back, he's not been the same player that he was. So until they find that goal scorer, I mean, they spent a lot of money, didn't they, on Fabio Silva?
Yeah.
And it didn't work for him last season. So, I don't know what's next for them, really. I see that they're interviewing Lopetegui. I think I pronounced that properly.
Yeah,
I always get his name wrong.
He was sat, wasn't he, at the weekend? from Sevilla, so I think he's the front runner, isn't he? But
Yeah.
I think looking even at the back end of last season, they didn't win any of their last. Well, they won one game in their last 8. That was against Villa, but
yeah. Let's not talk about that.
But sort of their last 7 games of the season, they picked up 2 points in their last 7 games, and that was against Chelsea and Norwich. And in that they lost to Newcastle, Burnley, Brighton, Man City and Liverpool. So I think almost that form has probably gone into the mind of obviously the people in charge at Wolves, and sort of when you look at it, it's literally 1 win in about 15 games. So it was probably his time, to be fair.
Yeah.
But I don't know where that leaves them this season now, because they are, they're not in the greatest of places right now. If you ask me, at the weekend I saw the highlights, but I wouldn't be, if I was a Wolves fan, I would be thinking now that, it is a possibility that they are going to be in and around that area sort of come the end of the season.
I think it's an important appointment for the board, because if they go out and they do get Lopetegui, obviously he's been manager of some massive clubs.
Yeah.
I think that would show the fans that actually, they are invested and they do want to keep putting money into Wolves and they do want to keep pushing them forward. But if they were to just go with, what one of the names, either plucking someone from the Championship or just with one of the classic names that always gets mentioned with the lower Premier League jobs, I think that to me then shows they just want to sort of steady the ship and try and survive and just stay almost where they are. So it'll be interesting what they do. I think if they do go out and get a big name, then it will give the fans the statement that they want, that the owners are in it for the long haul and they do want to take things to the next level. But nothing they've done in the transfer window suggests that, to be honest.
And the thing is now, when you look at it, hiring someone now is very dangerous, because the amount of games that everyone's got in this short period, in the next sort of 3 weeks, it's ridiculous. Like, I don't know about Villa, but Chelsea, pretty much back-to-back games, I think, up until the World Cup. Probably Villa are as well, to be fair. So, he's going to have to come straight in and he's going to have to put something together pretty quickly.
It's basically a game every 4 days, I think, now.
Yeah, because I think they've got about 8 Premier League games in October. So, I mean, time will tell, but I'm not confident for them at the moment. I mean, the whole, just moving on quickly to manager Steve Cooper at Forest, everyone thought he was getting sacked.
Yeah, he got a new deal.
They hold a press conference, everyone's there like, oh, he's getting sacked, and then it turns out he signed a 2-year extension to his contract. So, I mean, I don't really know what happened there, but, I wouldn't.
Bad intel.
Yeah, and I wouldn't see the reason to sack him, because I don't know about anyone else, but I'm not surprised where Forest are right now.
No.
So
they've done done a Fulham or done a Villa, depending on who you support, and bought in so many players.
They've signed over 20 players, haven't they? I mean,
it's obscene.
That is an overhaul, but yeah. Right. Well, I suppose we better mention him. Mr. 700 goals.
Yeah, we've done well to avoid him. Yeah, Mr. 700.
But yeah, so obviously Ronaldo scored his 700th goal, career goal, at the weekend. I mean, it's been coming for a long time. They must have been, it's that thing that they must have had 700 the number 700 in balloons waiting for him for a long time for him to actually get a goal. But
it's wilted on the floor now. It's just it was pumped up with helium, and now it's just like a wilted mess on the kitchen floor. But yeah, he did deserve it, and he played well when he came on. I did actually manage to watch the game.
It's a huge achievement for him, and
yeah.
I mean, when, like in our lifetime, I think he is definitely going to be up there with one of the greatest of all times. I think sort of our lifetime, with sort of Messi and most likely Haaland as well. But you know, it's difficult though, because you don't really know where he goes on from this, really, because obviously he is a bit part player at Man United at the moment, and I can imagine he's still very keen on wanting to leave. Especially with Messi scoring these Champions League goals, I can imagine he's getting a bit eager now to force the move. I still hear murmurs that it could still happen for Chelsea in January, but I kind of like how we're playing at the moment, and I just think bringing him in, where does he go? Because when Aubameyang's starting and scoring goals, and then when Havertz is starting and scoring goals, for me it would just be a bit silly to bring him in just because of who he is, if you know what I mean.
He'll be big wages as well, obviously. That goes without saying. You're going to be spending, $400,000 a week, I would say, easily.
His contract's obviously at the end of the season, so I can imagine that Man United are probably trying to get him out in January just to get something for him.
Yeah.
Before he signs a contract somewhere else and then ends up leaving free. Because I could still imagine they could probably get 10-ish million for him in January, possibly, but it depends.
One thing I will sort of ask, as a Chelsea fan, obviously, Chris, if you're Cristiano Ronaldo and you can join Chelsea managed by Thomas Tuchel or Chelsea managed by Graham Potter, do you think that will put him off?
I just think he wants to go and play Champions League football. I don't think he's that concerned at the moment of where he goes. And the thing is, with January, a lot of the sort of lower teams in Europe are already going to be out, so his chances are going to be very few and far of where he can go, because I assume in the summer he was offered out to a lot of these top clubs, and a lot of them have said no. So it kind of begs the question of, where does he go? Does he just stay at Man United and just see out his contract and just, at the end of the season just leave? But then he's probably going to be on the bench for most of the league games. I know he's playing Europa League games, but then that's dependent on how far they get. So, I mean,
it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's one of those where, I mean, I always think back to Solskjaer when he used to be the super sub, didn't he, for Man United? He always used to come on and get a goal. If you do well as a sub, depending on the manager you have, they will either keep you as a sub because it's working, or you might get a chance to start. But I would imagine that if this does work, if bringing Ronaldo on the pitch after 60 minutes or whatever seems to work and get goals, I don't think Ten Hag is the man that's going to change it. I think his argument is going to be, but it's working. We're winning games at the end of the day. So, I can't see it changing. But in the same breath, and if you come on as a sub and you don't do well, you're not going to push for a start either. But it's a strange situation for him to be in. Obviously, I think age is a big factor. I think Ten Hag, as we know, Chris, from his Ajax days, he's always bought through youngsters, played them for a couple of years, and then obviously they get to a certain point where he sells them on for big profit. He wouldn't necessarily have to sell them on for Man United, but he will still want to bring those academy prospects through. And I think Ronaldo being there, I think he's a player that Ten Hag will look at and say he's a good player for the kids to learn off. But he's probably not going to be starting every week. I mean, he did it with Huntelaar, didn't he, at Ajax? He always has the sort of elder statesman of the team to kind of bring those kids through. So I think he would want to keep him, but it's just whether Ronaldo's happy or not sitting on the bench. I personally don't think he is. I think he'll still want to win trophies, and I think he's going to want to be in the Champions League. But like you say, it's a question of who he goes to then, because I think at the moment the only teams that will probably take him are teams that he's probably already played for. I don't think Madrid. I think it would either be Sporting, Lisbon, which I don't know whether they could afford him or whether he'd want to do that, or he'll have to go back to Juventus. Because I can't see anyone else in Italy that really needs him at the moment. I don't think Inter are going to want to buy him. PSG, I mean, they probably would, but whether he'll want to play in the same team as Messi, I don't know. And then outside of that, really, you're looking at Barcelona. They're not going to sign him because he's a Real Madrid player, and they might be going out of Europe anyway. And then you're limited then to Bayern Munich, aren't you? And he's not really a Bayern signing, no, I don't think. No. So he's either got to look for another team in the Premier League, or he's got to stay where he is, I think. Unfortunately for him.
Yeah, I just think he's his own downfall as well, because when he went back to Man United, there was a lot of, there was a lot of noise about him. I don't think he was ever going to join Man City. I think it was all sort of a fabrication of trying to get him back at Man United. But, why wasn't there clauses in his contract to say, if they didn't qualify for the Champions League, he'd be able to go? Or why didn't he just sign a 1-year deal?
Yeah.
Because surely he would have thought that he was joining a team that weren't Champions League worthy at the time. So, there's got to be questions set on his side as well as to why, there weren't things in place for him where he could just openly walk at the end of last season because they didn't qualify for the Champions League. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Right. That's it for this week's Talking Points, and we'll be back in part 2 with some of our usual features. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode, and we're going to go straight into the Wonders of White. So we've literally just talked about him in part 1, but Ronaldo scored his 700th career goal 20 years and 2 days since his first career goal, and that was at Sporting Lisbon.
The longevity is incredible. I wonder how many goals Haaland's got to go to get to 700. He's got to be on 100 already, right? He's on... I'm not sure how many he's on, but I think he's going to have to keep his average up quite a lot to get that. But he'll definitely get there or thereabouts, Haaland. This is Liverpool's worst start to a season since 2012-2013 season. And that season they actually ended up finishing 7th. So, the wheels coming off. Yes.
Erling Haaland is 19 goals off the Premier League record. But he has got 28 games left to score 19 goals to equal the record.
That's
so he can slow down now. He only has to score one goal pretty much a goal every 60 minutes to keep. But even when you think about it, the record, that's still pretty good.
Oh, just unbelievable. I mean, was the top scorer last season 18 goals? I think.
20. I think it was like 21. I think it was because it was a joint one, wasn't it? So.
Yeah, six goals short. That's just ridiculous. 6 goals short. Unbelievable.
And Sergio Ramos picked up his 21st career red card yesterday.
Of course he did.
Which makes believe it or not, he's the most red cards of any player in the 21st century. And that's at least by 7 red cards ahead of any other player.
That does not surprise me at all.
And I didn't write it down, but I think the other 2 that were near him are both retired now. So
He's only going to extend his lead at the top of that table.
So, doesn't change, does he?
No.
Okay. Right, so we'll move on to this week's quiz. Now, this week's quiz is all about goals.
You've teased me.
I alluded to this in a tweet yesterday.
You teased me on Twitter with a programme from a game that I don't fondly remember. So this could be traumatic for me.
It's further down the line on the running order of the quiz, so you're all right.
A bit of time to wait.
This is a very easy quiz, and I am probably going to expect you to get at least 7, maybe 8. And there are a few numbered-based answers where there'll be leeway either way.
Cool.
Just in case. Okay. So in 2050, Lionel Messi, this is ridiculous, scored 93 goals in a calendar year. That's ridiculous. But for which team did he do this for?
I wish it was Aston Villa, but sadly, I don't think our team scores 93 goals in a year. It was the city that I've just come back from. It was Barcelona.
It was Barcelona. Yes. 93, that's ridiculous, isn't it?
Astonishing.
Okay, so, well, I think I've already given you the answer to this one. Who did Ronaldo score his first goal for?
Sporting, yes, you did mention that just a minute ago.
Question number 3. I've also almost gave you the answer to this one, but I didn't. I stopped myself. Who has jointly scored 34 goals in a Premier League season, which is a record to date? Underline to date.
To date,
because I think that record is going to be beaten. So there's 2 players.
Could be beaten.
They both scored 34 goals. I am going to ask you to name both.
So, I think one was Thierry Henry, and I think the other one was Andy Cole.
I will give you half a point.
Oh.
Andy Cole is correct. It was Alan Shearer.
Of course it was. He would have been my third choice.
I'll give you half a point. Okay, which team has scored the most goals in a Premier League season with 106?
That has got to be. It's got to be either Man City or Liverpool, hasn't it? It could be United. Could be Chelsea. No, let's face it, Chelsea aren't that entertaining. I am going to go with Man City.
It was Man City. They actually beat Chelsea's record, by the way.
You had to get that in. Just had to get that in there.
Funny enough, it was the same. It wasn't the year that we put 8 past you, but never mind. Right. Can you name a current player who has scored more than 500 career goals, but not the 2 obvious ones? Not Ronaldo, not Messi. You just name me one other. There's 3 current players who have more than 500 career goals currently.
Right. Is this like over Europe or like the world?
It's the world. It's the world. This was a world thing, but I'll give you a clue there. They've played for European clubs.
Okay. 500 career goals.
I want 2 out of the 3 to get a point.
Oh, so there's 3 players. There's 5.
There's 5 players, but you cannot name
Ronaldo.
Messi or Ronaldo.
Or Messi. Okay, so I've got 3 attempts at a name. Okay, so that actually... Okay, I'm going to go with Lewandowski because he's the obvious one.
I will say that's correct.
And there's 2 more. 500 career goals, and they're all still playing.
One of them is playing. One of them, from my understanding, doesn't actually have a current club, but is still in the realm of football.
Okay.
Still wants to play football.
Who would the other two be? Yeah, Aguero kind of been far away, but I don't think he would have got 500. This is actually quite tricky now. This has really put me on the spot, this one. I'm going to say Suarez. Yeah, Suarez.
Correct. Yeah, he is on there. He is the one without a club currently. He left. He joined his hometown, didn't play and left within a few days. There's one more.
He was apparently going to sign for Villa at some point, but that never happened. One more. Okay. This is quite tricky now.
Well, you've got the point, so I'll let you guess.
Just a free stab in the dark. Okay.
Yeah.
You've
got your point, because you named two, so that's what I wanted.
I will then go with who might be up there. It's still quite tricky just to even think of anybody, to be honest. I'm going to go with Benzema. Benzema.
Alright, it's not Benzema, but I'll give you a clue. He scored an overhead kick against England once.
Oh, Zlatan.
It is Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Oh, of course. Never doubt Zlatan. It's got to be.
Okay. This one you might not get, but, I mean, I wouldn't have got this one. Do you know who Archie Thompson is?
Actually, I might do.
Okay, well, he is the subject of this next question. So he scored 13 goals in one game for Australia in 2001. But do you know who they were playing on that day?
I do, actually. This is one of the weird.
That's not much fun.
You said a couple of weeks ago, you sort of mentioned that in researching stuff, you kind of find the answers to future quizzes. This has happened to me because it came up in another quiz that I was doing. So I think it's American Samoa.
It was American Samoa. I think it was 31-0. I think it ended up. I mean,
not a good day to be an American Samoan fan.
Ridiculous. Okay, question 7. So you've only dipped out 1/2 a point so far. So you are on 5.5 of them so far. So most goals in a Premier League game was 7-4. But can you name me the fixture that happened in?
It was Reading. And
it was Reading, but who did they play?
I think it was Portsmouth.
Correct.
Oh, drag that from the back of the mind.
Portsmouth, Reading. Okay. So, this is probably one where you might struggle on, but you can go one either way on this one. So I'll give you, if you get it one less or one more, I'll give you the point.
Okay.
So, can you give me the number of goals which holds the record for most goals scored in one Premier League weekend?
Oh my God.
Did you understand that question?
Yes. So the most goals in total for a Premier League weekend.
Correct.
Oh my. So I'm guessing that's 10 fixtures, and what? I'm gonna go 5 goals a game. I'll go like 53.
53. I'm afraid it's wrong. Even with your one, it's 40.
Oh, I wasn't far away. That's not too bad. 9 away.
It broke the record. I think it was from 2019. And the previous record was 43. Okay. So, right. Aston Villa's record defeat came against Chelsea. But can you name me 2 of the Chelsea players who scored on that day? I'll give you a clue. God. One of them scored twice, so there's only 7 players.
Oh God. It's such a long time ago now. It's got to be about 10 years ago. I watched the entire game. I watched all 8 goals go in.
If I told you that Rafa Benitez was our manager at this point as well.
Yeah. Do you know what, Chris? If you'd have asked me who missed a penalty that day, I could have told you it's Lucas Piazzon.
Yeah.
But I can't.
Score. He did assist too, though.
Yeah, I can't name any of the goal scorers off the top of my head. I'm going to guess and say Drogba.
Okay. And do you want to guess another one?
And I'm going to guess another one, and I'm going to say Oscar.
Okay. You got one right. Drogba wasn't actually at Chelsea at that point. Because it was the season after we'd won the Champions League and Di Matteo had been sacked about a month before. But needless to say, you were right with Oscar, but there's 0 points. I can run through them for you. So Torres scored after 3 minutes with a header, past Brad Guzan.
Yeah.
David Luiz scored a free kick.
That happened a lot that day. Oh, of course, yeah. David Luiz. Yeah, I remember that one.
Ivanovic scored a tap in. Lampard scored from about 35 yards.
Lampard, of course.
Ramirez got through on goal and scored, and then he scored again towards the end of the game. Oscar scored with a flick, and Hazard took the complete Michael out of 3-goal defenders and scored.
Hazard as well, yeah. I definitely should have got a point.
I was there that day.
Yes, I see you got the programme to constantly rub it in my face.
Yeah. So yeah. Didn't quite get that one right. You got Oscar right, yeah. This one's pretty straightforward. So, how many league goals is Erling Haaland currently on?
As I literally just looked it up because we were talking about him, it's 15.
It's correct. Right, so you got 1, 2, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, which is half less than what Aston Villa conceded on that day.
Hooray!
So you actually did better than them.
Brilliant.
I said you'd get 7 or 8, and you got 7.5. So
well done. Good guessing.
I'm the only winner here right now.
Of course.
And I will not be allowed to do the quiz ever again.
I just need to have an entire quiz dedicated to Chelsea's failings. Maybe that'll be for next week, just the worst moments in Chelsea history. Although I've already asked you questions about losing to Bradford, so I'll have to find some more. I'm sure there's some out there. Do you want to do Who Am I then? See if you're a true winner.
Yeah, go on then.
Up to you. What do you want to go, like start to finish or finish to the beginning?
Yeah. Well, he's a finished player, is he?
He is a finished player.
Okay. Yes. Just go from the start because it's easy because I can kind of grasp nationality by.
Yes, this is no exception, unfortunately.
No exception.
Okay, so they started their career. Do you want a date? No, actually, no. I'm not going to give you a date.
No,
they don't play anymore. So they started their career at Slavia Prague. They then moved to Borussia Dortmund, and they then went on to Liverpool, Portsmouth, Aston Villa, loaned to Stoke City, and then ended their career at Sparta Prague, which I imagine is a big rival of their first club, Slavia Prague.
Did he start at... Alright, so we're talking... He must... I mean, if we're talking Czech players, there can't be that many that have played for Liverpool.
I didn't think this through, really,
no,
to be honest. I always forget the nationality gives it away of the first club, doesn't it?
I mean...
Stick to English players, Liam, come on.
I mean, I could have gone with... you could have tripped me up a little bit with Igor Bishkam. He's Croatian. I think I know this one. Because he has the funny surname. It's Berger. Is it Patrick Berger?
Correct. It's not Vladimir Smica. That's the only other Czech player I suddenly thought of that it could have been for Liverpool.
But he didn't. It's the no, it was the
he didn't play for Villa.
Liverpool Portsmouth.
Yeah, not many players have done that route.
He played for both Prague teams, did he?
He played for both Prague teams. He scored.
That have gone down very well.
His scoring rate was good for Slavia Prague as well, so he must have only been young. And he got 24 goals in 90 games. And then he moved...
Because he must have been at Liverpool for 6...
He was at Liverpool from 96 to 2003. And
he's one of those, right, that I remember just purely because of stickers.
Yeah. Literally because of the sticker books every season. Yeah. His record for Liverpool was actually good. I mean, I know he's never really sort of considered like a great or anything, but 28 in 148 games, he was pretty consistent, I think, till some injuries sort of, just after the millennium came in. 99-2000, he got 9 goals in 34, which is not bad in a team with Owen and Fowler, and I think McManaman still might have been there. And then, I think his career was sort of...
Is he managing now, do we know? Or is he dipped into that sort of stuff? Or?
I don't think he is managing, or at least according to Wikipedia, he's not.
He was quite prone to injury, wasn't he? I vaguely remember.
Yeah, he was. It says post-playing career, Berger continued playing football on an amateur basis for 6th-tier Czech Republic side Dojny Shabry. At the age of 40, he was still playing for them. And he's only he's 48 now, so I think his career has officially ended. But no, I don't think he is.
Because you don't really see him when Liverpool. Does he ever play for like the Liverpool Legends team or anything like that? Because I don't recall seeing his name.
No, I don't either. There, but to be honest,
he was he was a big part of their sort of late 90s, early noughties team, wasn't he? Because he was a winger, wasn't he? From what I remember.
He played nearly 200 games for them in total, so 195 games in all competitions, 35 goals. And then he moved to Portsmouth for a couple of years. I think the first years they were in the Premier League, and got 8 goals in 60 overall. And then he moved to Villa and he was sort of a bit part player for 2-3 years. And he had a loan spell at Stoke City apparently that I didn't even know about, and he played for us. And then back to Sparta Prague to end his career. So he didn't do badly overall. But the thing that surprised me, I thought he was one of those players, like Poborski or someone like that ended up with like 120 appearances for Czech Republic, but he only got 42 appearances, and he actually retired from international football in 2001, so he was still at Liverpool. He would have been 27, 28 when he retired from international football. So he did a Paul Scholes.
Maybe that was like injuries. He wanted to focus more on playing sort of for clubs rather than getting injured and not being able to play. So
yeah, but he was a good player back in the day.
Good one. Just the Czech Republic thing, kind of.
Yeah, I need to think about that properly next time, don't I?
I mean, you could have gone. It could have been Milan Barros.
It could have been Milan Barros.
He played for Liverpool, Villa, Portsmouth.
Yeah,
so
that is true. He did.
I can't tell you who else he played for. He probably played for some other Czech teams as well. But I think Barros only stopped playing like a year or so ago, I think.
According to Wikipedia, take this with a pinch of salt. He's still playing for FK Vigantis, and I've no idea where they're from because it won't actually let me click on their page. So I don't know whether they're Czech or...
Just on there now, it says you can create a page for them. So you could just create a page for them and just put absolute nonsense on there if you wanted.
Yeah, he was less than prolific for Villa, to be honest. Not really remembered very fondly at all. But
I mean, he got don't know if I'm reading this right, but it says that Czech Republic finished third in the European Championships in 2004.
He did, and he was top scorer, and that's why we bought him, I think. Yeah.
He won. He was part of the Czech Republic team that won the under-21 championships in 2002.
There you go.
The guy's a legend.
Barros gained the nickname the Ostravan Maradona. So I think that's all the comparisons he'll ever have to Maradona.
Just where it says, this is unbelievable, right? It says on the 1st of November 2000, so Barros was arrested in France while driving at 168 miles an hour in his black Ferrari on a freeway, which is limited to 81 miles an hour in France. He was stopped by French police between Lyon and Geneva, and it was the fastest speed ever recorded in that region, surpassing the previous of 154 miles an hour. Which was set by a motorbike in 2000.
Wow.
He had his license and his car confiscated and had to return to Lyon in a taxi.
And I think that says all we need to know about
that's where he went. Actually, that's where he went after Villa. That's who signed him. So
yeah. So you can't wait to get out of Villa quick enough.
Right. Anything else?
Nothing from me this week.
No. Right, well, we shall be back next week.